All right, everyone. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and thank you so much for joining me for today's Friday Masterclass, where we will be talking audio today, and specifically we're going to be going over some of the sound design capabilities of Adobe Audition, talking about things like tone and noise generation, checking phase for different types of stereo mixes, and then just some general techniques for leveraging some of the really cool tools that we have in both the multi-track and the waveform view to allow you to manipulate sound, stretch, pitch bend, do all kinds of cool things with this, even reveal a couple of effects that I've shown here on the stream in the past, but it's been a minute. Things like the Doppler effect and some other things like that. So we'll take a look at some of those things. And of course, I will be capturing your questions live at behance.net/live. So always like to point out, why can't I find my button there? There we go. I will be following the chat at b.net/Adobe Live. So if you've got questions for me, that's the chat that's right in front of me. And if you're watching on my channel, I'll take your questions at the end after the stream is over. So if you want to get into the live chat, the real-time chat, this is that's the one you want to go to. We are coming to you live on YouTube Behance. So thank you so much for joining. A couple quick shout-outs to everybody. Reverb Mike, Travis Cook, Z by HP, Rick Adams, Umacorn, Stony, Wade, how are you doing? Nice to see you all. Yes, Paul, you did a wonderful job of ending that one. I will continue the tradition, I promise. That banhammer gets the best of me sometimes, but not today. Damaz 197B, how's it going? All right, nice to see everybody. Very cool. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and kick right in? Got quite a few things to showcase to you, and I think we're actually going to start by working on some tone generation. So I'm going to switch over my screen here, and let's go ahead and get started. Oh, and look at that. The waveform kind of wonderfully matches my purple background here. That's kind of cool. That feels, something about that just feels right. Okay. All right, so let's talk about tone generation and why you'd want to do this. Probably everybody's first question. Why the heck do I even care about generating tones? Well, first and foremost, you can use Audition to generate things like different types of noise. Brown noise, pink noise, white noise, and gray noise, which is another variation that I'd never actually really heard of until we introduced that. I guess it's a real thing. As well as generating tones. And you can use tone generation for all kinds of things. Obviously, in lieu of having a synthesizer or a virtual instrument natively in Audition, you can use this to just generate different types of tones. You can also use this to generate the ubiquitous bass drop that you always hear in trailers and in movies. And that's just that simple low frequency, right? Where you just kind of feel this push of bass, and then the pitch gradually lowers and just gets really subsonic and kind of shakes the earth, and then ultimately could also make you puke. I'm going to show you how to do that. And this is actually done inside of the waveform view. So first, I have a blank file here. Let's go ahead and open this one up that I just called Tone Gen. And if we go up to the Effects menu, under Generate, all right, you'll see we have noise, speech, and tones. Now, just to get this one out of the way, you can in fact generate speech. This was something that we added to Audition quite a while ago. I'm not a huge fan of this. I guess we put this in here. The idea was if you needed like temp voiceover, you could use this to do that. We have a lot of languages in here, so I guess that's the nice part of it. It's not doing translation, so I imagine if you're wanting to do it in German, you would paste German in here. Right now you can see this is set to Scottish Standard English. That's a preset up here. Oh, look at that. We have all these different presets as well. By name, all right, kind of cool. And if I just go ahead and preview this, you can see you've got the speaking rate here, 160 words per minute. That's actually pretty fast. Maybe we slow this down a little bit. All right, and the volume, let's take this down. I have no idea what this is going to sound like. It's been a while. Let's see what this sounds like, if this even works.
Hello, my name is Fiona. I am a Scottish English voice.
Okay. Let's try Daniel from the UK. Let's hear what that one sounds like.
Hello, my name is Daniel. I am a British English voice.
Yeah.
Hello.
So, in any case, if you're looking to add some temp voiceover because your voice is just the worst, I suppose you could do it with this. It is what it is, all right? But just kind of showing you that that's in there. That's one of those things someone might stumble upon and go, generate speech? What? It's kind of cool. It does sound like the early Mac voice synthesizer. There's nothing Siri-esque about that at all. But whatever, it could be useful. And again, if you just need like a temp VO, maybe it'll do it for you. Why not? Give it a shot. Okay, but we're going to focus on generating noise here. Now, again, you could use this for all different types of effects. Last week's stream, we were talking about visual transitions, right, for video. And there was a section where I added some audio elements to those transitions as well. These, in combination with overlays, light leaks, dissolves, can also just kind of punch up your edits. Well, you can use noise generation also as transitional elements. Also, if you're trying to add tension in a scene, you could add different types of noise. If you modulate that noise and add different types of effects, you can create kind of spacey, ethereal, sort of underscore soundscapes that can be used for a number of different things. This isn't going to be for everyday use. Also, if you're just looking to create, with everyone being so mindful these days of apps like, actually, is there one called Mindful? All these meditation apps and everything. I do meditation old school, but if you like those, Headspace and all those things, you can also use this to generate things like brown and pink noise, which are very sort of relaxing. And if, a lot of people use noise machines to sleep, things like that, well, you could actually generate those files right here. So it's a really simple interface. There are some presets. You can check these out. We're just creating a mono file here. And then you have, as mentioned, 4 different colors of noise: brown, pink, white, and gray. So if we just kind of take a listen to this, and you'll hear they all have distinct characteristics. All right, take a quick listen here. All right, maybe make this a little louder. Increase our intensity. So as you're taking a look there, you can see that the brown noise really kind of focuses on low frequency content. This is the kind of thing where if you were trying to sound design via brown noise generation, you could create things like thunder and, sort of like low frequency waterfall kind of rumbling. Again, with a little bit of modulation, with a little bit of creative EQ and tweaking and reverb, you can kind of create different types of sound effects with something like this. Go ahead and generate this real quickly. All right, let's get out of our frequency display here, go into spectral frequency display. Again, you're kind of seeing what that looks like visually, with the bulk of your amplitude and energy here down, sort of occupying 500, 300 hertz and below. So this one kind of really focuses on that sort of low end spectrum. All right, if we go back up to noise here, and let's go into pink noise. Now, pink is kind of the it's sort of like a representative of sort of nature. This one has kind of a combination. It's sort of in the middle between brown noise and white noise. So this one I find to be the most pleasing. Again, sleep machines, noise machines tend to use pink noise, and that sounds like this. And you can imagine if you generated something like this. Here, let's make it even a little bit longer. Let's do like 20 seconds. All right, so here's our pink noise. Again, we can take a look here and you can see that characteristically it's quite different. If you remember in the brown noise, up here in the upper frequencies, there was a lot of, you could still see sort of purple to black, not a lot of high frequency, attenuated high frequency in brown noise. Here in pink, we're revealing more. Again, you still have kind of the bulk of your amplitude down below 1K, but you've got a lot of amplitude in that mid-range as well. So this one is really nice if you're just trying to create that sort of, it could be anything kind of ambient. And again, you can use this and, if you do any kind of synthesis, pink noise, white noise generation can be used a lot to kind of really tweak, like engine sounds and jet, using different types of effects. Also, if you were to generate this in stereo, You can do different types of things with this. Even if you were to add something as simple as, let's go into modulation, maybe go into something like a phaser here. Rubber Monster. I have no idea what this is going to sound like here. Let's just bring our output gain down a little bit. Let's take a listen to this. And again, as we adjust the modulation rate there, we could change the speed of that. You can see how like you can create a lot of sort of mechanical, you know, sci-fi type sounds just by using noise generation and then using phase or flange or any combination thereof. Again, with some carefully cueing and reverb effects, you can make some pretty unique kind of sounds, especially if you don't have a synthesizer to do that. You know, behind me I have the Moog there, which makes that kind of sound generation really easy because it has a noise generating filter section on there as well, okay? So that's pink noise. And then the last variation here that we'll kind of cover, as mentioned, is white noise. Now, most people assume that this is actually the kind that most noise machines tend to use. It is equal proportions of all frequency, but this one kind of focuses a little. Your ear perceives this more on the high end. So this kind of comes off as very, very bright, hissy, tinny. I don't find white noise to be, frankly, terribly pleasant. I'd rather listen to pink. Here's what that sounds like. In fact, here, let's just go ahead and generate it so we can look at it here. And again, if you just sort of look at the frequency spectrum here, it's really fairly even in terms of amplitude. Same if we were to go into our spectral frequency display here. Now look, there's no particularly bright section. Do you remember just before we still had brightness down in this range here? Let me grab my marquee. For pink noise, right, there was still some yellow and orange down here. And then as we looked at brown noise, it was extreme yellow and orange here and sort of reddish orange, red here. And then up here we had that purple to black, meaning less amplitude at the higher frequency. This is sort of all frequencies, even amplitude, but it kind of has just a hissier edge to it. Again, some people use this for sleep and find it very relaxing. That to me, you know, is not. It's a little too much on the high end there. But this is kind of cool to be able to do all of those things, and it's just done real simply with the generate noise command. Okay, now taking that a step further, the noises in your head are so much higher. After they play the Star-Spangled Banner, that's the sound you get. Ah, Reverb Mike. Revealing some age there, my friend. Most people probably won't even get that joke. Okay. Late night TV, friends. It would go offline. You'd hear the Star-Spangled Banner, and then TV would be offline until 5 a.m. or whatever it was. All right. Last one here is tone generation. Now, this is really useful for a number of things. First of all, you can just generate synthesized tones with a number of different waveform shapes. So again, consider this your own little personal synthesizer here. You can generate pure tones in sine, triangle, sawtooth, square, and inverse sine. At any particular frequency, you can modulate those frequencies. Again, sort of if you're wanting to create sort of a vibrato type effect, you know, if you're trying to simulate sort of a theremin, that's a beautiful vocal theremin there. That'll be a meme. Really easy to do with this. Again, in lieu of having like a synthesizer to do this, you also have the ability to stack up to 5 different harmonics on top of that bass frequency. So you can create full chords. You can create fully harmonically rich chords with octaves using this tone generator. Now, at the base of that, like for instance, if we wanted to just generate a pure A440 tone, which is kind of the standard bass frequency for tuning A440, go ahead and generate that in a sine. Okay, if you're trying to tune your instruments, right? That's, you know, your tuning forks often will be A440. In fact, I think I even have one here. Do I have an old school tuning fork in here still? I do, yeah. Check it out. Who is not familiar with a tuning fork? Wasn't going to do this, but we're live. Why not? So I've probably had this since I'm a teenager. Wait, let me go back to the camera view here. So this is what a tuning fork looks like. And what you do is, and you'll see it has this little round nub on the end. So you hit it on something, and then you put it up to the base of your ear, and your whole head will resonate at A440. I think this is even stamped 440 on it. It is, although you can't see. So you'd hit it on like a table here. Yep, we're at A440. All right, let's see if the mic will pick it up. Let me see. I don't know if that's picking up anything. Anyway, this is what a tuning fork looks like. I've just had it forever. This is the same bag that it came, in. I got that when I was 15. Just held on to it forever, all right? Invaluable resource. In any case, so you can generate tones. Now, where this also gets interesting, as mentioned, is you can generate harmonics on top of that. So if we were to say, create something like 110 hertz tone, so A440, if we go 2 octaves below A2, that's 110 hertz. That sounds like this. I don't know if you'll be able to hear that on stream. Let me go ahead and I'll make this -2. See if that's a little bit better for you. All right, let me go back to my screen as well. Could you actually hear it? That's so great. Your dog's getting nervous. Oh yeah, no, we won't go up there, although we can generate. Actually, let's go ahead and do that. Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, since you said it. All right. Man, Gabrielle, I should make a video on how to improve feminine voice. Oh yeah, I've got a few of those, and I talk about that, you know, and it's really more about any type of voice, finding the warmer, resonant frequencies. You know, masculine, whatever it is, everybody has different resonant frequencies. I have a good friend, she does voiceover. She's got very low, beautiful resonance. So if she were to use, like a standard, typical EQ for her type of voice, it actually sounds a lot brighter and less great. So it's more about finding really the base fundamental where there's just some richness, and then EQing and building upon that with some careful compression. But we can definitely cover that in another stream. I've done a few of those over time. All right, Jason Rose. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. Nice, okay. Very cool. So we're gonna start with a base frequency of 110. Let me drop this back down to around -9. And if I wanted to say add a major third above that, or in this case, an octave and a third above that, because a third above 110 would be a little too low. I'm going to go an octave and a third above. So from A, the major third above that would be C sharp for all of my music nerds out there. I can now enable this second frequency component. I typed in 275. That happens to be the frequency for C sharp. All right. And now when I play this back, we have what's called a major third interval there. Now, if I go down to 260, we can change that to a minor third. So this is C major, A and C major. Right, back to 275. And then if we want to add the fifth on top of that, which would be E, 330 hertz. Now, change the shape. Real buzzy. Square waves are good for, you know, like a lot of my my son is really into Undertale. Any Undertale fans out there? And it uses a lot. It's like 8-bit style, you know, sort of chip tuny. A lot of square wave, a lot of sawtooth. Okay. So point being, you can generate these. This is also a great way if you're trying to sort of understand more about audio and music and really just the fundamentals of sound. What's really cool about doing something like this, now remember, again, I have the base frequency of A at 110, and then I'm an octave and a third, and then an octave and a fifth above. When I generate this, oh, this is super short too. That's fine. And we go into our spectral frequency display. All right. Oh, wait, no, I don't want that. Hold on. Sorry. Let me undo generate. I'm going to regenerate. Bring it back in here. It's just going to be a lot easier for you to see what those individual frequencies look like. All right. By the way, you can also mix the balance here. So if we want more or less of the major third and the fifth, let's bring this up to around -9 here. So again, we can kind of tune this to refine the chord however it is that we want. We're not modulating here. If we wanted to modulate, we could do that. All right. But we're not going to modulate for this. Let's go ahead and generate it. Go into spectral. And again, what's really nice about this is being pure sine wave, you can really distinctly see what those frequencies appear like. And so now we're looking at them in hertz, right? But if you're like, oh, what note does that represent? We can switch the display to notes. And now you're seeing our bass, and it's funny, it's actually, visually, it's a little bit off here because here's technically A2, and the center appears to be around here. But A2 is 110. Again, you can see then C4, right? And then E4 right above. So it's just kind of a cool way if you want to nerd out and start to begin to understand what these things look like. By the way, because these are pure tone, we only have 3 discrete harmonics happening here. There's nothing else playing, right, outside of those ranges. That's the beauty of pure tone, right? If we were using, you saw when I generated accidentally there with square, triangle, and sawtooth, you're getting a lot of additional harmonics on top of that. With pure sine wave, this is just pure tone generation. This is what they would use too if you were striping tape back in the day. You're trying to reset your mixer to a standard reference level. You do 100 hertz, 1,000 hertz, and 10,000 hertz. Pure tone, real simple, real clean. This is kind of a nice way to understand those old school workflows if you're into that sort of thing. Okay, let's check this out. Okay. Can you display both at the same time? No, well, yes. I mean, I could. So here, I could redo generate tones like this. And then let's see if it'll let me. I think I can generate on top. Now, you wouldn't want to generate the same tone on top of the sine wave necessarily, but let me see. Does it let me just modulate the two? I think it does. Oh, by the way, you can also sweep. We'll get to that in just a second. But let's see if... I don't think this will create another file. This should just overdub right over top of it. And it's all the same amplitude as well. Let's see. Let's see if this works. I don't know why it did it for a shorter duration there. But yes, so now you can see there's pure sine and then sine and triangular. Kind of feel like going, are you feeling okay, Dave? It's just a major chord, It's very, very pleasing to the ear. What's interesting on a side note, you don't hear a lot of, you're actually starting to hear more. About 10 years ago in pop music, you started to not hear major thirds really. Almost everything was fifths. And they would imply like a minor third, via some other element of a chord or a melody line, but you didn't hear. There was like this period of music in the early 2000s where you just never really heard major thirds really obviously displayed in chords. And maybe because that it's just too positive or something. I don't know. I like major thirds, I like minor thirds too, but I did this analysis years ago and it was really interesting at the time. And I remember this was like was early 2000s, because remember there were songs by like the Editors and a lot of that kind of post-alternative early 2000s rock. And they'd imply major or minor, but really you were just hearing fifths, you know, which when I went to Berkeley and studied, and I did this even in my classical days, parallel fifths, if anyone's familiar with that, were like, again, faux pas, just didn't do parallel fifths. Now nobody cares. No one's cared for a long time, but even, you know, musicologists are like, well, yes, if you're Mozart, but, you know, if you're whomever, whatever, Megan Thee Stallion, who cares if there's, you know, parallel fifths? The musical part of it is not really what is the focus, right? So, you know, lyrically, that's the focus, or of the beat, or whatever. So things change, obviously. It's just interesting that there was a period where major thirds, just major and minor, was implied, but not really explicitly played or featured as part of a musical performance. Okay. Let's make sure you follow the rule of thirds, right? Max Martin, Travis Cook, you bet. The one and only, responsible for so much. Thank you, Umacorn. I can't do that, Dave. Uriel, very good. Jason Eno, music for live streams. Love that. Love Brian Eno. Travis, don't get me started. I was just watching a trailer. What trailer did I just see this morning that's using Hit Me Baby One More Time? Or was it Oops, I Did It Again? It's a new movie coming out. I just forgot it, but I just saw it this morning, and I was like, oh, well, free Britney. Keep using that music, and she deserves it. Okay, so that's tone generation, all right? So let's talk about creating like effects like the bass drop. So we're going to go back into Generate. We're going to turn off the harmonics here. We're just going to start with a bass frequency, and we'll do this at 7 seconds here, of 110 hertz. Oh, sorry, we want sine wave. Okay. And -9 amplitude, that's fine. Okay. And let's go ahead and generate that. Superb. Okay. So here is what just a plain A110 sounds like. But we want to do that thing that you see in trailers. You see, I'm remembering in all the prequels, Star Wars, episodes 1, 2, and 3, every time they'd show some kind of scene, planetary scene, there was always, before firing or doing anything, you'd always hear that. It was also in the original films, too. I remember when there's that scene in the Death Star. I guess this would be Empire Strikes Back, but the Death Star, when they're like, anytime they'd move levers, you know, right? So this is something that we use a lot. I'm going to amplify this a little bit more so you can just hear it a little bit better. My sub is just at the threshold of my sub, so I can feel it like slightly trying to percolate through there. I think I actually have it cut off at 100, so it's not quite. This is a little bit above. Let's go into effects, time and pitch bender, okay? And inside the pitch bender, what you have here is a variable slope that you can add keyframes to and draw upon to affect the change in frequency, bending the frequency. So what you'll see here is that, again, along this blue line, I can simply click and add keyframed points, right, to manipulate that curve. I'm currently using spline curves, right, Bézier's, because I want that to be as smooth sounding as possible. I'm going to delete that selected one there. I don't think we need that necessarily. Maybe these. And the way I have these spaced out is I start at full 110, and then I gradually want it to... Now I may need to actually start doing that back off. I'll start going down a little bit sooner than that. All right. Do one here at around... Yeah, this is too long. I did this way too long. So it should really start dipping down about here. Yeah, right about there. And let's go down about 10 semitones. And then we'll end at around -17-ish semitones. You don't want to go too subsonic because one, you're not going to hear it, and two, I mean, unless that's, you can do that, again, if it's part of the LFE, if you're trying to design this to have some really intense low frequency rumble. You may not hear it, of course, depending upon your systems, and you're not going to hear anything below 20 anyway. You'll just feel it, potentially. But real quickly, just to kind of show you, here's what a bass drop might sound like. Again, just manipulating this curve. Now again, if we want to speed up that drop down to, you know, super low frequency, we can adjust this. By the way, by using those splines or Béziers, it's a very logarithmic sounding frequency sweep, right? If we go into, if we uncheck this, it becomes linear, and you can see that that's just going to produce, I mean, it'll sound okay, but right, it just doesn't have that same kind of gradual, there's just something much nicer about this logarithmic spline style frequency sweep. And if you're taking a look at the frequency analysis here, again, this really kind of shows you exactly what's happening in real time. Okay? Nice. Yes, exactly. Ease out. Now, by the way, if you wanted to technically modulate back up, you can do that too, right? So let's say that it lingers down at, you know, 17 semitones below. Well, I'm feeling it at the sub there. And now it's going to go back up. Okay. So if you're trying to create those types of sounds, and a good example, let me go and apply this, you can kind of see. This is also just one of those things, it's really cool to kind of look at spectrally, you know. Again, as a good way to sort of understand frequency and what's happening. And like I said, look, this is all at minus 17 semitones. You know, we're well into like the 20, even sub 20 hertz. I mean, you can barely even feel this. If we played this 20 hertz and below for a good long while, assuming you had big enough subs, you could very easily get very nauseous. And in a good theater, you'd feel very uneasy, okay? Kind of looks like a smile, right? Cool. Okay. So a practical use of something like this might be something like this boxing scene, which many of you have seen here on stream before. Play this back for you. There's a section right here where I have this bass drop where it goes into kind of a slow motion. So again, a lot of times we use slow motion, we use bass drops in combination with slow motion video action because it just kind of sells the image of things really slowing down. So take a quick listen here. Right, that disoriented state. I love that. You know, if you remember, we worked on this live on stream a year ago, and this is one of my favorite things ever. You know, it took a long time, and you can see it's, you know, for every hit, every punch, there's like somewhere between 3 and 5 different punches, some of which I found via some of our free sound effects libraries, some of which I just recorded myself, punching my own abs, punching into a pillow, all recorded, by the way, just with the iPhone. I didn't use my Zoom recorder or this Porta-Dat or anything. Totally good enough, totally works. And then it's a lot of just pitch bending and manipulation, but it's really this bass drop scene. And then having that, again, high-pitched. This would actually be another good example if we wanted to generate some noise, because right, there's this ringing sound that I'm using there. I'm not even sure which sound effect that is. Which one is it? Is it this one? Yeah, see, this is just, it's just a tone. You can even see it. You know, this is like a tweaked, this kind of sounds like a tweaked square, or maybe a slightly, probably a tweaked square. You know, maybe slightly signed, not really signed, but you can see that this is pure tone. And by the way, another thing that you can do inside the spectral frequency display up here for your own edification, if you're interested, you know, you can also highlight or select individual frequencies in a file. When you make that selection and play back, you're only hearing that selected frequency. So here's the fundamental, right? And then here's the harmonic, and the next harmonic, and the next harmonic. You know, now we're getting into lower amplitude. This one's around 3,500. Around 4K. And then, let me see, I always forget, is it, oh, we have to use the paintbrush for that. If you're using the paintbrush, and if you're painting on frequency like this, if you hold down Shift, you can paint multiple frequencies. Now, this is typically used if you're trying to use the sound remover, but you can use this for sound design as well. Notice you've got opacity, because that controls effectively sort of the amplitude balance of your selection here. But now I selected those 4 harmonics, and you can even hear how they sort of because of how I painted it, you can hear them cascade on in sequence. We wanted to add another. Actually, let me, here, I'll add these higher ones a little bit later. Okay, and if we wanted to get really wacky, we could say, okay, copy that to a new file. Now just use this, and now we could take this weird isolated piece of that thing that we just heard, and maybe we add some noise to it, right? So we could generate some noise. This might be a good opportunity to use some white noise here, maybe decrease the intensity. About 4 seconds. Let's see if this will do it over top of. Yeah, I don't want to replace. This should hopefully just paste right on top. Let's see. Oh no, it isn't. If I select it, maybe I need to select everything. Because I know you can paste. Yes, okay. So I want to overlap mix. So you see what I did there? So the default is replace. Making the selection allows me to overlap. So let's go ahead and click OK. Alright. And now we add some weird analog delay. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I do in my free time, but you get the idea, right? This is all just generated tones and trying to create some weirdness. It's really easy to do, all right? Now, one of the other things that I did with a lot of these sounds, as mentioned, was using some stretch features. So again, you can do that as well right on canvas here. So for instance, this particular sound, this Foley table in here, I'm going to, I've got some of these things are, I've got different buses. I want to mute these buses. All right, let's go back up here. So the original file sounds like that. In the multitrack, we have this feature called global clip time stretching, which to enable on screen on clip, you just enable this little radio button right here. All right, so this is the top of your track controls. And then on your clips, you'll have these little handles that you can stretch out either from the beginning or the top or the tail, and it'll tell you the percentage that you stretched. So in this case, if we wanted to stretch it out even more, this is now 775%. Right? Drag it back to like its original, which is probably something like that. And you've got a couple of different methods here. So we have rendered and real-time. And as you might imagine, the real-time one is probably going to sound a little grittier, but it doesn't have to do any, it's just right on screen real fast. When it's in rendered mode, it does actually do some background processing to render that so you can hear it in real time. It sounds better for most things, but sometimes the real-time variation actually sounds great too. Now we happen to also be in a vari-speed method. So we're not trying to maintain the pitch. We are, by design, when you're in vari-speed mode, you have monophonic and polyphonic. These two do not affect pitch. They will maintain the original pitch of your stretch sound. But with vari-speed, when you stretch something out, i.e. elongate it, the pitch will drop. When you speed it up, the pitch will raise up. It'll go higher. So the real-time and rendered variation of a vari-speed actually tends to sound fairly similar because it's doing sort of the expected behavior. So let's listen to the real-time one here. Let's stretch it out. Was it 392 or something? And let's go to rendered and see if that sounds much different. You just saw a little progress meter there. Is it rendered? Oh yeah, quite different, right? So here's the real-time one. It actually has a lot more sort of lower bass mid-range frequency. Totally different. And here's the rendered one. But for this particular sound here, that one worked the best, right? Go into real time, let's hear that. It's like totally lost. You can't even hear it with everything else when it's in the real-time mode because it's occupying a lot of the same, again, lower frequencies that the bass drop and some of these other things are doing. So in this case, I chose the rendered one, and it worked really, really nicely, okay? So that's clip time stretching, and again, just kind of revealing some of the options here in terms of whether you're going to use a real-time stretch method or a render stretch method. Oops, what did I just do there? I don't know. I did something weird. Undo, delete. Yes, I didn't want to do that. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I hit delete by accident there. All right, so cool. Any questions on that? Yes, stretch is a standard thing in properties, not an added effect. That is correct. And if you disable this little radio button, however, you will not be able to stretch on clip. You'd have to do it in the properties panel. So by enabling that clip time stretching button here, it just gives you those little handles so you can stretch it visually. And this is actually the best, right? Because if you're trying to stretch against a bass drop or some other audio reference, you'll know exactly how long you want it to last. And then you can play around with all the parameters here: transient, sensitivity, precision. You know, I have it at high. Again, if you're trying to go for kind of a dirtier, grittier, sometimes the lo-fi and medium precision for sound design are really, really wonderful options. Again, because they'll just give you a different color altogether. Okay, so we've got about 10 more minutes here. I want to cover two more things. The first being working with stereo material and dealing with phase issues. I had a bunch of questions this week, curiously, about some older videos where I was talking about using, and I've said this on stream many times, always checking your audio in mono, all right? Now, even today, you might be thinking, well, why does that matter? Everything is at a minimum stereo. Certainly, Netflix, Hulu, movies, these are all 5.1 or whatnot. Why does mono matter? It matters because a lot of times you're not going to know what's going to happen to your file. Also, when you're uploading to different streaming services, or whether it's like YouTube or Vimeo or wherever, a lot of times, especially if people are on like low bitrate connect or low bandwidth connections, those services have this automatic way to sort of downstream the content so that it'll still play. But a lot of times, right, the visuals start to, they'll play back at 240p, and you might end up with mono or mono sounding audio. The point is, if you're working with stereo material, and particularly if you're working with stuff with voiceover or voices, it's really important to check that everything is properly in phase. If you're recording stereo piano or a drum kit, or you might even be choosing to record your voice, or maybe, like in studio with a lav and a boom, you could have out of phase issues when you place those two mics together. Now, you may not hear it when you're playing back in stereo, but if you sum things together in mono, what'll happen is if the phase is off and you sum together, that signal would be effectively in the center. It will disappear, okay? So case in point, now I mocked this up intentionally, but this is kind of an example of what could happen when you have things out of phase. So this is a recent little stinger that I did around what you missed on Adobe Live, and it's voiceover and music. This is also featuring a song of mine, which I will finally mix and hopefully release during my sabbatical time, which is in 3 weeks. So I'll be around for two more Adobe Lives after this, and then I'll be off until the end of June. Won't see you till the end of June. But I took my voiceover, which I recorded just as a stereo audio file here, and flipped the phase. So when I play this back, voice and music, in stereo, everything sounds okay. Take a quick listen. Okay, sounds fine. However, this audio file, which in stereo sounds fine, if I go into our phase analysis, what you're seeing is that this is completely out of phase. So what does that really mean? What does it mean to you? Phase is very hard to understand. I'm not going to try. I was trying to figure out a good way to describe it. When it's out of phase, what is going to happen is if we sum this to mono, so we combine left and right, all of that signal is going to drop out because it's 100% out of phase. So if we go back into multitrack here and go into the mixer, now on every channel you have these sum to mono buttons, all right? Especially on the master, on the mix fader, all right? If we go ahead and choose sum to mono, I'm going to play this back, and then I'm going to sum to mono, and you'll hear the voice just disappears. It's gone, right? Let's bring it back. Now you might say, but wait a second, you have stereo music there. How come nothing there is missing? Well, because everything is in phase. So even if you have center channel information, it doesn't necessarily mean just because you're summing that it's going to drop out. Again, that's a phasing issue. Now, there are things that we used to use back in the day, something called A-B listening. This was also used to create what was known as TV tracks of music. And this really worked well in the late 60s, early 70s, where you had vocals in the center, drums on the left, bass on the right. Everything was kind of separated. And really the only stuff that was in the center, sometimes bass, but often it was just vocals. When you would sum left and right together, flip the phase of one channel, all the center channel information by default is removed. So because you had drums all the way on the left, your drum kit was all there. Because you had bass on the right, your bass was still there. Guitars on the right, still there. Maybe you had reverb or echoes in the center. All that stuff is gone, vocals are gone, and that would give you what was called the TV track. They called it the TV track because this is what a lot of artists would use when they'd go on Top of the Pops, or Beat Club, or Musikladen, or any of those late 60s, early 70s variety shows where performers, they didn't often do live performance because it was hard to capture live, and there were just too many variables for live recording in those days, with pretty primitive miking setups, especially in the late 60s, early 70s. So oftentimes they'd be singing live, but they'd be singing over top of a track, right? But the key is that the music here was already perfectly in phase. And actually, I can go back to the session that created this. So here's the tune, Open Mouth Chomper, all right? Now, even something like, again, a stereo piano. I have the piano isolated here. Let me go ahead and play a little bit of this for you. Keep our phase meter on. It's pretty low amplitude, sorry about that. Sounds good even in mono, right? Because it's in phase. And sorry, you're seeing the peak in there because I had to raise the amplitude, right, so much. It's in phase, all right? So when you sum it, you still hear warmth, you still hear some brightness. It's just mono. When you use the phase analysis meter here, again, if you see your little green orb fall below the line into inverse, you've got phase issues. But this also lets you kind of see in real time what the stereo of the mix looks like and how balanced it is. Not to say you can't have imbalanced mixes, but using phase analysis will show you visually if you've got stuff that's kind of leaning more towards the left or right. It also reveals when you have things like drums or sound effects that are hard panned. Take a look. You're going to hear some tom-tom fills in here that really occupy the left, extreme left and right. Take a look. Right? So there's that floor tom hit. Kind of looks like a bird. But that floor tom, in phase, in a stereo drum kit, right? A lot of momentary energy happening on that right channel. Right? I like to pan the floor tom almost discreetly hard right. There's also overhead, so you're seeing a little bit of bleed and kind of the mid 50% right, okay? It's just a great way to kind of visually identify where things are in your audio. And again, if it were just something like, kick and snare, maybe those drums, in this case, I actually do. I have them just centered. These are just going to be straight up in the middle. Okay, so this is something with any kind of audio that you're producing, especially with a visual, always a good idea to check for mono compatibility. And it's not so much about anymore checking for mono compatibility, it's about what happens if, for whatever reason, it gets summed together during playback. And like I said, a lot of your, streaming services out there, if connections are bad, they're going to use the lowest bit rate possible, the lowest bit depth, and you'll often hear kind of mono audio. Even if it's just voiceover, you could lose your entire voiceover. Even if it's just voice, there's no music or anything. If that vocal is out of phase somehow, that's going to be a problem. Now, we actually have something really cool in Audition that can correct that for you. Now, this piano intro, you can see it's slightly out of phase in some of these sections. Now, this is not really an issue, but it does go slightly out of phase here. We have an effect, which I always forget where it is. Is it in noise? Yes. Under noise reduction, restoration, automatic phase correction. So if you have phase issues, this can correct the phase of your audio, all right? And if I were to go back to our sound design mix here, okay, and go into something like that, automatic phase correction, all right, fix the right channel here. Does it even have repair? Repair. Let's see if it does it. Right click, control click on the clip itself, replace with After Effects comp. All right. Default. And then I want to add just a very simple animate in. Okay. We're going to choose medium. We can even choose, in this case, to auto center pan for this. But this, you have to play around with this a little bit. You also have to listen to what it's doing, which is also very critical here. I don't recommend just kind of using that without really knowing what you're doing, but it can be very effective. But unfortunately, friends, that is all the time we have. I just saw the time. So until next time, we've got more on Adobe Live. Have a good one. See you then. Bye-bye.